agenda approval. Any adjustments to the agenda? Under Supervisor Broderick, the Riverfront Park Development Resolution and the Riverfront Parks and Recreation Master Plan are going to be removed from the agenda. Also, under legal, there's going to be an Edmunds resolution that needs to be reapproved. We also need an executive session to discuss personnel issue in regard to a particular employee. Anything else, Tom?
Nothing else, Supervisor. There's one other thing I'll talk about.
Okay. Anybody else have anything?
I'd just like to talk about the streetlights under my rights.
Okay.
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor? Aye. So moved. Resident statements. Linda Carlson, 435 Kenwood Drive.
Yep. I'm here to ask the town what the zoning code is for a fence. We have a neighbor that, first of all, put a fence up without a permit, or started to. He was stopped twice, and when I did get the permit, when I did get the fence up, he's got it 18 inches off the ground, the bottom of it, and it's 8 feet tall. Is that legal?
Tim?
No.
And you're familiar with the
Yeah.
situation?
I'm
right?
familiar with the situation.
You want to?
He did definitely start the job without a permit.
He also put in a shed without a permit.
Well, yeah, I don't know about that one, but now I do.
And I'll look into that.
And the fence was approximately 9 feet tall, which any way it cuts the mustard. The fence was facing the wrong way, it was too tall. He came in and got a permit, we explained to him the code, and he is making corrective actions, and he has to make corrective actions. We're giving him time to get them done, so it needs to be handled, so.
Nothing's been done as far as correcting the fence height.
Yeah, well, we're giving him a little time, but, I mean, it will take place.
Because when the variance, he was given a variance back in 2015 for a 10-foot variance to our side of the property. And part of that variance was his existing fence was to come down. So why is the town allowing him to put a fence up again?
Well, the motion of the variance said nothing about the fence.
Yes, it did. I have the notes, well, not the motion, but I have the notes here. And they said the fence was coming down.
But how the motion was approved did not have anything in the fence.
But the variance was approved for a 2-car garage and a 36-inch man door. It was not approved for a bathroom, a bedroom, and a 7-foot extension to their living room.
Okay. Well, I tell you
I mean,
what.
I'm just,
Yeah.
one of our neighbors stopped my husband the other day and said, your neighbors must really hate you. It looks like a stockade over there.
Well, as far as, the fence is being handled.
The fence is being handled.
When you say,
The zoning board put no restrictions on what the use of the addition was. They gave a variance to come within so many feet of the property line. The use of the square footage is not part of the motion.
Well, see, they asked
The
for
things
it.
the things that are talked about in the minutes are not part of the motion. Whatever the motion says is the motion. So unless they put, you cannot have a fence in the motion, I can't tell them they can't have a fence, because it was not part of the motion.
But the variance was only for a 2-car garage and a 36-inch man door.
The variance was to come within so many feet of the
And
property
to come
line.
within so many feet for a 2-car garage.
Yeah,
They added a bathroom.
doesn't matter.
We would have fought it tooth and nail.
The variance was to come within so many feet of the lot line, whether it's a jungle gym or it was for a 2-car garage or if it was for a living room addition.
Then why hasn't their
Doesn't
home
matter.
been reassessed?
That's not my problem. That's not my job.
well, the fence is being taken care of. What's a reasonable amount of time?
I mean, 30 days. Yeah.
Okay.
And they were also, I have the notes. They weren't supposed to store anything beside it. I have pictures of the garbage that they put 5 feet into our property.
Again, it wasn't part of the motion.
And I mean, we can, I'll send Tom, I'll send you the motion, and we'll, you know.
Yeah, I can review it.
Yeah, so we'll have our town attorney review the motion that was granted, so. And we'll
Yeah, all I
visit.
got was copies of the notes, and we got the notice on a Monday that they were gonna have a court hearing, or a zoning board hearing, and we had already had reservations to go to California, so we could not be at the zoning board meeting. We
Okay.
came out to the town hall, asked for them to postpone it, they wouldn't do it.
Okay. Could you come here for a second? Above your number, could you put your phone number?
You know, which I thought was very unfair, that they wouldn't postpone it, so we had a voice.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Stephen Lyle.
I just wanted to say, as a member of the Buffalo Niagara Coalition for Open Government and the Lewiston Taxpayers Alliance, I have to laud this board for continuing to allow resident statements both before and after. There aren't a lot of groups in this county. In fact, at the county level, they don't even do it. So I think the board is to be lauded for that. I just get concerned that here's another board meeting and apparently this isn't being filmed.
All right, I have the same concern, I know Mr. Guy has the same concern.
But you're filming filmed without, if you're a cable commission being here, the staff knows how to turn it off.
I don't know. Is it,
I only have the top of the camera,
you have what?
the top of the camera.
Aha.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
I'm looking at
Karen Lyle?
I think I'm going to pass.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Amy Whitrow?
Pass.
Okay. Thank you very much. Moving on, Drescher and Malecki auditors present the 2018 audit. Carl? Introduce yourself to everybody, please.
Of course. Hello, I'm Carl Widmer. I'm a partner at Drescher and Malecki. We're hired by the town as the external auditors, and I'm here tonight to present on the results of the audit of the fiscal year for 2018. Board members, I've supplied a presentation slideshow to sort of walk us through tonight's presentation. But essentially, tonight's presentation, to go through a full financial statement front to back, that might take a few hours, and that's on the short side. So in the presentation tonight, we'll cover some auditor communication. That'll be on slide 2. In the financial statement update section, we'll take a focus of the town's operating funds, that being the general fund, town outside village, highway fund, water and sewer funds, and sort of take a macro point of view of some financial highlights, see how you did for the year, where the fund balance levels are at, and then wrap up with some observations, which will include some items we discussed with management throughout the audit, and items that we'll consider for inclusion in the management letter, which is provided to the board at the conclusion of the audit. So slide 2, the auditor communications. These are required communications between the auditor and the town for those who hired us. We did have a meeting with management, supervisor, and the accountant to go over these in detail, so I'll walk through. If you have any questions on them, please stop. But our responsibility under generally accepted auditing standards is to provide an opinion on the financial statements. Now, why that's important is we want to outline what responsibilities the town has and what responsibilities we have as the auditors. The financial statement booklet is often referred to as the accountant's report or the auditor's report. Only the 2 pages with our letterhead on it are actually pages that we own. The rest are the management's numbers and their footnote disclosures. We review that document as a courtesy and help compile it, but we like to differentiate that those numbers and everything that's reported in those financial statements is responsibility of the town. We come in and assess risk of the certain significant accounting cycles, design a course of tests that we're going to put them through, and then come up with our opinion that can these financial statements be relied upon for whoever's reading the financial statements of the town. So we're hired to provide that third party, that unbiased verification that they're fairly stated and they can be relied upon. Significant accounting policies and estimates. In the event there are any big changes from year to year, we would inform this group so that you're not left behind of what's happening within the finance office. This year, the town implemented GASB statement number 75. GASB provides all the accounting guidance for how your financial statements are compiled and maintained during the year. Essentially, you're a long-term liability for other post-employment benefits, your OPEB is what they call it, underwent a new series of actuarial tests. The town actually outsources this test to a third party, and they provide an actuary's report that's provided to us for inclusion in the financial statements. That was performed under new guidance of 75. Previously, it was under GASB 45. And what you'll see in the financial statements is that your total net position has been restated to show this larger number. In summary, it's tough to do it without going into detail, but this large liability says what's the amount that the town would be on the hook for if they were to cease operations today, yet still need to pay out all the benefits that they're giving retirees and retirees' families for health insurance. Previously, you were able to amortize that and bring it on your books over a 30-year period. We were about 9 years into it, and GASB 75 said, enough with the amortization, that whole liability needs to go on your books now. All right, so it sounds dreary and drastic. It's a big negative number, but what's important to note is this is universal for all governments, so you're not alone. Everyone's financial statements had to conform to this new standard. And the ratings agencies, the comptroller's office, everybody knows how to read that information and how to interpret it. Independence, as your external auditors, I can verify that both in fact and appearance, we're independent from the town. There's no conflicts of interest that keep us from being hired as your third-party external auditors. Finally, in the event we didn't receive full cooperation or there was we call a scope limitation, if the finance department said, you know what, we'd rather you not look at that transaction, why don't you select this one instead? We would let you guys know that something was kept from us. We received full cooperation from the town as we have in prior years, so there's a full scope audit. Any questions before we get into the financial update? We'll get right into it then. First off, your general fund. We're going to provide 2 graphs per fund in this presentation. The first graph is going to be a 5-year line graph presentation of the revenues over expenditures, and then the second graph will present the fund balance levels at December 31st of each of the last 5 years. So looking at the operations trend, your general fund, as you can see, revenues were above expenditures as they have been for the past 2 years. This year, the general fund revenues, they went down a little bit, ending at $2.8 million. Expenditures also held pretty consistent with prior year, but went down a little bit, down to $2.4 million. It resulted in $373,000 of an increase in fund balance for the year. Now where that puts you on your fund balance levels, if you move to slide 5, here's a bar graph of your total fund balance. Total fund balance is about $1.3 million. And in your financial statements, it's broken up as to how liquid or how available or restricted those funds are. The dark blue portion, the larger portion for 2018, $1.2 million, that's the unassigned fund balance. When your town is being compared to other towns or a reader of the financial statements is looking at any one number, this is the number they're looking at, the available or unassigned fund balance numbers. And a common benchmark of what they use to evaluate this dollar amount is saying, if we look at your next year's budget, so your 2019 budget, what percentage of the year's appropriations, your appropriations were just short of $3 million, how long could we go through in the year using only your unassigned fund balance? So this $1.2 million represents 43% of the 2019 year's budget. All right, so that's the number or the percentage that a lot of people are going to throw out when they're evaluating this fund balance. That's grown since last year. You can see the last 4 years here we have growth in the general fund. And that's a common theme when we look at the other major operating funds as well. So moving on to slide 6 for your town outside village fund. pretty similar to your general fund. It brought in netting about $350,000 of an improvement to fund balance. So both revenues and expenditures increased. Nothing due to any one real reason. Sales tax revenues were favorable this year, and that helped out this fund and the highway fund. But when you look at your fund balance at the end of the year on slide 7, you can see there's been steady growth in this fund for the past 5 years as well. And that dark blue portion, again, showing the total available fund balance of $1.8 million, that represents 60% of the 2019 budget, which is about $3.1 million. That's grown last year, that available fund balance, that was at 45%. Excuse me. In the highway fund, again, similar trend, increase in activity. This is both revenue and expenditures. Sales tax, again, came in favorable. And on the expenditure side, you did pay off some debt with the bond anticipation notes, along with some additional road repairs, and the cost of gas this year, or 2018, was actually up from the prior year. Fund balance improved $326,000 in the highway fund. And on slide 9, you can see that got you to just short of $1 million of fund balance, of which $795,000 is the available. And that's going to equal out to about 26% of next year's budget. Moving on to water and sewer districts. Water and sewer, they also had similar years of increased activity on both revenue and expenditure side. These funds, that's going to happen often as the usage in these funds, the usage of the utilities go up. You're going to net more revenue coming in bills. But then on the other side, you have to provide a constant supply, and that supply cost is going to go up. Also to note, you did have water and sewer rate increases in place for 2018, so you also realized some larger revenues from those. The Water District Fund, as a result of this year's activities, spending of $2.1 and revenues of 2.2, you netted just shy of $90,000, getting to an ending fund balance of $404,000. Now, as you can see, if we compare the water fund to the last 3 funds we talked about, this is at a lower level. The available fund balance of $362,000 represents 13% of the 2019 budget. You did improve from 2017, but when you consider a budget of nearly $3 million in the water fund, one thing that we pointed out in our discussions with management is that a fund like the water fund, one thing to consider when you're evaluating how much fund balance you're maintaining in this account is you have infrastructure in this fund that if anything goes wrong, oftentimes it's going to be a costly repair. So you may want to maintain a higher level of fund balance in something like a water or sewer district fund in the event an emergency occurs or you need a quick repair to have that cash on hand. Finally, the sewer district. Again, very similar to your water fund. This one netted $100,000 for the year, $3 million of revenue, and $2.9 million of spending. You saw increased customer sales with the rates and usage. And then on the other side of spending, your costs went up because you had to supply more. The fund balance on slide 13, very consistent with last year. This $2.7 million of fund balance is almost entirely consistent of that available fund balance, and that represents about 60% of the 2019 budget. Leading up to observations, are there any questions on the financial performance or highlights that we talked about? Okay. In the observations, one thing I wanted to point out to this board is going through the audit process, oftentimes there are some adjustments that need to be made in the general ledger to get the presentation perfect for the financial statements. In past years, there might have been a handful of entries and the number of entries were slimming down, but this year, there were no material adjustments that needed making to the general ledger for the audit. And why I bring that up is that can give you some assurance and confidence that the record keeping in your finance office is at a high level. If we come in and there were no material adjustments necessary, that means that the records were in good shape. So just wanted to bring that up. There were a few items that we discussed for inclusion in the management letter, and the first being, we talked about these higher levels of fund balance in the operating funds. It's imperative that the town put a fund balance policy in place and marry that with its plans for future capital reinvestment and use of the restricted funds. The town is in a unique position that you receive some funding, whether it be through grants or, in this case, we have the landfill, or modern disposal, right? You receive these amounts that they're restricted for certain uses. To marry a plan on how to use those funds and what levels you should be maintaining fund balance in each of those funds is very important. In the event the comptroller's office would come in and audit, they would want to see why are you maintaining X dollars of fund balance in each of your operating funds. So you'd be prepared to answer that question. Another item was to look into earning some interest on the cash. The cash on hand at the town is at a pretty high level. And looking at the interest earnings, we thought that there are certainly opportunities out there right now to net some interest earnings. Based on that discussion we had months ago, I think that plan, the efforts are already in the works. Finally, we want to include a smaller comment on IT security. I think it's becoming apparent that governments and software data is vulnerable to penetration or to misappropriation, whether it be, whatever the party's desires may be. They've been attempting and have been successful at getting at data. So we want to make sure that the town of Lewiston is prepared to ward that off. And in the event something did happen, you would have a policy in place to say, this is what we do now. Overall, we went through it, the financial position. The town is in a stable position. Had growth and fund balance of all your major operating funds. So you're in a good place to adopt a fund balance policy and say what levels are appropriate to maintain and evaluate the capital needs for the future. We plan on issuing an unmodified opinion. That's a clean opinion. In the accounting world, that's what you desire. And I think we should be good to release financial statements in the next couple weeks. We'll be good. So, are there any questions at this time? I've included my contact information on the final sign, so if anything comes up, please don't hesitate to reach out. But thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to work for the town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just a few comments on some of the observations. As far as investments, we passed an investment policy, and we're definitely looking, Jackie and I are looking within the next week or two to go ahead and invest some of the money. New York State, again, like I said before, has some of the strictest investment policies or what you can invest in, so we will not be buying Bitcoin or anything. It's basically, T-bills is what we're looking at. So we're going to with Key Bank and we're going to meet with M&T Bank, and we're going to discuss, probably reach out to a third or fourth bank as well. So, and as far as IT security, we did go to a cloud-based system. So, as Carl mentioned, it's the ransom situations where a lot of municipalities and companies have had to pay ransom to get their information back. We're comfortable in that if we lost any information, it would be what happened today. Before it was downloaded to the cloud, it wouldn't be going back. And we're definitely going to come up with a policy for a what if something happened, we'll kind of do that. But I want to thank Carl. I know we discussed it last week, a lot of this, and look forward to working with Drescher Malecki in the future. So, anybody else got anything to say?
Carl, I was talking to Jackie today on this, and she said we do have the fund balance, but we should have enough in our fund balance to cover the bills for 3 months in the town. We're not there yet. So we're not that high in the fund balance yet, are we?
Well, 3 months would be your 25% number. So looking through, several of the funds are at that level. The 3 months, using that as the magic number, I was talking to a couple of councilmen before, and we can't provide what the right number is. As your external auditors, there's a certain line where we can't pass and give management advice, really. But one thing I can offer is the GFOA, is Government Finance Officers Association. They've provided that 2 months is a minimum in a general fund. So that would be 16.67%. They want to see no less than that. And then town by town, you look through your unique characteristics and adjust it from there. So 25% is the level that the town is looking at. Evaluate that and include it and formalize it in the fund balance policy.
Stephen Norris is working on a fund balance policy.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, I'd like to mention that we do have a fund balance policy in the works currently.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Carl.
Carl.
Okay, department head statements. Donna? Chief?
Nothing other than, we're gonna be without water during this week, so schools redoing their water system, their delivery system, so we have a temporary setup right now. Shouldn't affect anything operations-wise. The generator is up and running, everything's fixed with the generator. Just moving into again, making our way through the festival season right now, and everything. We're going
Good. And I think the positive was on the night of the concert, Earth, Wind and Fire, you participated in a roadblock,
Yes,
and not one DWI came through.
people got the message.
That's
And there was a
phenomenal.
sold-out show, so there's close to 10,000 people there, so,
I was shocked by that, to be
yeah,
honest
I
with
was
you.
as well.
I was pleasantly surprised, so that's a good thing. So I know people weren't happy with all the traffic backup, but, you know, it sends a message. Come on down, have a good time.
It does.
And not too good a time, so thanks. Yeah.
Where was the roadblock?
In front of Sacred Heart Villa, that area, on Third on Lewiston Road,
Okay.
right in there. How many cars were stopped?
I
Or secondary?
Again.
I thought they said something, okay.
I have to look again, I don't know.
Yeah. So there were a lot of unhappy customers heading south. Tim, anything?
The only thing is, unsafe structure demolition is going to be paid in full.
Oh, okay, yeah, that was too. Okay. That was under Councilman Max. Jackie, you're on the agenda. Bill, anything? Bill Conrad?
Just the one thing about the date of the town being, originated and confirmed with Margaret to come up with and with the Department of State and State Association of Towns, so but that's really all.
What is the date?
In 1823.
Really?
What did I tell you?
Mrs. Maggard, you want to you're next. You want to touch base on that?
Yeah, I am so proud of you, Bill. He confirmed what I already found out. But that's good, really. It's a confirmation that that seal is wrong. We got to write it. And last month, I asked for permission from the board to put a committee together to rectify that and maybe make it a little bit more conducive to the town and not the village. So what's the results? Can we put a committee together?
Can't you do it as a subcommittee of the Historical Society?
Pardon?
Couldn't you do it as a subcommittee of the Historical Society?
No. I wanted to put a committee together from the town
Okay.
to go over that and come up with a good, legitimate seal for the town of Lewiston.
But your committee's based with all town residents, right, or their village residents in there, right?
There's village references up there.
No. Your committee that you already have.
The bicentennial committee?
No.
Oh, the commission?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, the commission could do it.
that's what I think.
That's what I meant to
Yeah,
say, I
that's what I meant.
apologize.
You would like that?
I think that makes sense.
instead of forming another committee, I mean, see if they're interested.
I sure will. I know that there's a couple of other people that are outside of the commission that are interested in being on it.
Tim would.
I know.
He wants a picture of himself.
Just the beard.
Just the beard. So, yeah.
Santa Claus.
Yeah. So,
Okay, we can work with that.
now, I think what Bill found out, to top what you had already found out, was towns, the story was, it was formed in 1818 and incorporated in 1823. The towns don't get incorporated.
That's right.
Only villages get incorporated. So even today, if you were forming a town, it wouldn't be incorporated.
Correct.
So. that
Only
was-
villages.
yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much, I guess.
Thank you.
Yeah. Dan Zano, anything? Nothing? Okay. Jeff Ritter?
No.
Nothing. Bob?
On the agenda later.
Okay.
I'm on the agenda as
You're
well.
on the agenda. So, okay. Moving on. Approval of the meeting minutes. Regular town board.
Move for approval of the June 24th regular town board meeting as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Move for approval of the special meeting July 8th, 2019 as printed.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. So moved. Audit payment, Councilman Morial.
July 22nd, 2019, I move to approve the regular abstract of claims number 1884 to 2052. Recommend payment in the amount of $236,246.95, plus a post audit of $8,367.45.
Second. We have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. New business, Donna, public correspondence.
The town received a letter from a resident on Meadowbrook Drive requesting a slow children at play sign be placed in their area there.
And I think, Bill, you would talk to Dave Train.
Dave Train called and he said he would like this referred to the signage committee, which is made up of Frank Brevin, police chief, David Train himself, Gary Wasco, Christopher Winsell, members of the team, and liaison Rob L'Oreal. They will be looking into this site and other sites similar to this.
Okay.
No action needs to be taken.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else, Donna?
Nope, that's it.
Under Supervisor Broderick's liaison report, we have in front of us a resolution for an engineering planning grant. Tom, do you want to touch base on this, or Jeff?
This was a resolution not prepared by myself or our firm, but prepared by your grant writer, Connie Miner. I spoke with her